Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but Diane DiResta, founder and CEO of DiResta Communications, is here to talk about knockout presentations, how to deliver your message. Well, I love this, with power, punch, and pizzazz, and we sure all need that. Diane, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, as we ask all our guests, tell us a little bit first about your background, your company, and your website.
Sure. My website is DiResta.com, DIRESTA.com. And I am the founder of DiResta Communications, which is a consulting company in New York City where we work with executives and leaders to be more impactful in their communication. So whether it's presentations, interpersonal communication, or media training, we work to make sure that you are more influential and more confident. I started out as a speech pathologist in the New York City schools and have the scars to prove it. No, just kidding. But I have a clinical background, so it gives me an advantage because I understand how people learn. I've also worked as a stand-up management trainer at Solomon Brothers, and I was an AVP at Drexel Burnham, when the investment banking firm, and used to do recruiting of their MBAs for fixed income and equity. And then went out on my own and did a lot of freelancing until I decided to narrow into those three buckets that I talked to you about. I've spoken on 4 continents, so that's very exciting. And the most exciting news is that Knockout Presentations is now in its 3rd edition, and the official launch is tomorrow, the 18th.
Well, unfortunately, this won't appear for a while, so
okay.
Why don't you say it has just appeared? Okay.
And it is launching officially on September 18th, so I'm very excited.
Okay. All right. Now, Diane, I guess my question is, how do you add all 3 of those things to your presentation?
When you say all 3 of those things, power, punch, and pizzazz?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, in order to have punch, or let's start with power, you need to have the power within yourself. So when I talk to audiences or when I'm coaching one-on-one with executives, I talk about the YAM formula. Know yourself, know your audience, and know your message. So the first step is with you and changing any of the negative beliefs that limit you and being more positive in how you are perceiving yourself and the audience. So the power comes from within. Then we show you techniques to show you how to be more powerful on the platform. And that's where you have the punch. Now, the punch has more to do with the message as well as how you deliver the message. But do you leave people with impact? Does your message have a punch that's memorable? And a punch can be a hook. Most people mistakenly start with what's important to them. Good morning. Today I want to talk to you about my service or product. And people don't care about that. So the savvy presenter, the person who has the most influence, knows to talk in terms of what the listener cares about and lead with that. And then the pizzazz are all the bells and whistles, all of the things that you do in terms of your stagecraft, PowerPoint, music, stories, analogies. So that's a quick way of saying how to speak with power, punch, and pizzazz.
Well, that's a good way of starting. Like you, I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm always amazed that the first thing is you never have the same audience twice.
Right.
And I'm always amazed how sometimes the same joke or the same approach will go over wonderfully with one group and fall like a dead lead balloon on another group. Okay, and so
that's
we'll start.
So true.
It is, isn't it? But so let's start with the message. When you say know your message, if you're a small business and you're in the audience, what you're doing is trying to sell your business or your product. Am I correct? So how do you go about knowing? It's a nice thing to say, but a lot of people don't really know their product.
Well, the first thing that you want to do is be really clear about what that message is and be clear about your outcome. So one of the mistakes people make, whether you're in small business or not, is they tend to be all over the place. They go off on a tangent because they weren't clear from the get-go in terms of their intention. So the first step is set your intention and be clear about your outcome, because that's going to give you focus. So here's a way that I work with people to get clarity and focus. Fill in the blank. At the end of my presentation, the audience will blank. The answer to that is your outcome. And so once you start there, instead of starting with the PowerPoint, start with your outcome, and then everything that you write up will lead you to that ultimate outcome. So that's the first step in your messaging. And, I have to say that people don't realize, or I should say small business owners don't realize how important and how powerful speaking is as a marketing tool. Your message can either make or break your business. When you're in front of an audience and they see you, it's like test driving a car. And so you become known in their minds as the expert. It doesn't mean it's going to happen right away, but what you do is you plant seeds, and the next time they need that person or that service, you're going to be front of mind. So I often talk about how to do that effectively, and that's messaging. Getting in front of the right audience is key. And I want to go back to what you said about one day it's good and the other audience it doesn't work. The reason that happens is because people don't do the audience piece. In other words, they don't analyze or profile. And I wrote a whole chapter in my book, Chapter 5, on audience analysis, because you have to really understand how they're wired, how they like to receive information. And here's something that's very stark in contrast. The way that I would present to a sales group is so different from the way I would present to an engineering group. So if I'm talking to sales, they want that rah-rah, that pizzazz, that competitive energy. And if I were to speak like that in front of scientists, I would lose credibility. So you have to tone it down. You have to have a lot more facts, a lot more science and data behind what you're saying. So it always comes down to know your audience before you even create your message.
I'd like to jump back a second, Diane. And you said about saying up front what your end message is. What do you mean by that?
In other words, when you are planning your message, you want to be crystal clear. In other words, when I'm in this meeting, is my outcome to get the sale? Is my outcome to request a meeting? Is my outcome an upsell? Is it to build a relationship? So you want to be really clear. Am I there to inform? Am I there to persuade? So people or to entertain. People need to be very clear about what they're there for and what the message really is. And when you're clear, then as you develop the message, you're going to be more on target.
Well, let me jump in here, and I hate to break up your flow, but I have to ask this. I see vast differences in audience when it comes to age. Older audience tend to be more willing to listen to you rather than a younger audience who would seem to be saying, well, give it to me very quickly and in small bites because that's all I can absorb. What do you say to that?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're right, because that is the trend, and that's how things are different now. People want small chunks. That started also with the TED Talks of 18 to 20 minutes. So that whole idea of 90 minutes of a talking head is passé. People are not sitting through that the way they used to, especially with millennial audiences. So the key here, and this is true for any age, you want engagement, you want interaction. And when you involve audiences and they're dialoguing with you, you're going to be at your best. So give them an experience. Sometimes I do a quick exercise, and I can't describe it on the phone, but when they do that, they have an aha, and so they're involved. When you throw out a question and you wait for someone to respond before you go on, that's involvement. So adults want control over their learning. So the best thing you can do is to engage them and get them involved. Sometimes I bring up a volunteer. The other day, a woman asked me, well, what do I do with my hands? I said, come on up, I'll show you. So that works well with a millennial audience as well. Now, the challenge with them is they're always on their phones. So here's another workaround for that. Get polling software. Download it on your laptop and use polls intermittently, because then they're on their devices, but they're engaged with you. But again, it all comes down to, are you interesting? Because if your message is that interesting, they'll pick their heads up. They'll start to listen and engage.
Well, it's very
so
interesting.
It's connecting.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump on top of you. But last week I was at an event where it was a sales presentation, and they told you to download it to your smartphone, the presentation, and the sales representative talked to the phone rather than to the individuals. I thought it was very interesting. Didn't work for me because you're familiar with that. I had never seen it, and since I only use my smartphone as a phone, I was totally out of it. But that was okay. But let me then ask you a different question. You said about asking questions of an audience. I've used the Socratean method for years. But over the last 2 or 3 years, I've noticed that the younger audiences want to sit there and just hear it. They don't want to participate. You're saying the other.
Yeah, well, I think if you have them participate through polling or some technology, just the way you described, I believe that's the phone, where you put the PowerPoint on the phone and you don't have to project it. So you have to meet people where they are. And yes, it's a challenging audience, but again, if you set it up right, you can get that engagement and that ability to connect with people. But the important thing for people to realize, especially small business owners, is that speaking is the new competitive advantage, and you can't be without this skill anymore. So for all the listeners who are avoiding it, don't, because people want to hear from you. And here's why it's so important. Today, what's different is it's much more competitive in the marketplace, and everything has become commoditized. So that means you might have developed the greatest app, and it's just a matter of time before someone can duplicate it. So what separates you from the pack is your presentation. And I always tell entrepreneurs, if you're not speaking, you're leaving money on the table, because it is one of the most powerful ways to establish your brand, to be visible, to get out there, and to upsell people or to even sell things in the back of the room. So it's a great lead generator. I would recommend that everybody use it. If you are not confident about your skills, that's why I wrote Knockout Presentations, because it's like a seminar in a book. I wrote it with the intention that if you can't be with me in person, the next best thing is the book. And it's been called by people the Bible of Public Speaking, because it has something for everybody. So I realize how important that is. The other thing that is important to know is speaking is often called, or communication is often called, a soft skill, and it is not. It is a skill that has hard ROI return when you do it right. So if we want to go back to message, the ability to tell a story but be on point and be brief is a critical leadership skill for anyone out there who's an entrepreneur, a CEO, really important. So I'll tell you something that happened to demonstrate not only how to do this, but also the ROI of speaking. I had a CEO who was from a vaccine pharma company. He wanted to convince the executive committee to build a vaccine facility in France, and it would cost $300 million. So this was high stakes. So what he did is he brought me in to coach him, and we worked together for a number of months, and as a result, he was able to go in and get the funding. What's interesting is that $300 million investment turned into a $1 billion success. So that is the power and the ROI of effective speaking and presentation. So for anyone who's sitting here listening and doubting, go for it, because there's so much money and business to be made when you know how to present yourself and your message to the marketplace.
We're talking with Diane DiResta. The name of your book?
Knockout Presentations.
How to deliver your message with power, punch, and pizzazz. But now let's go to the next one, punch. How do you make a punch?
How do you make a punch? Well, part of that is hook. It's about hooking somebody so that they're engaged and want to listen to you. So here's what happens. In one of the chapters, I believe in chapter 1, I talk about the mistakes that people make, and there are at least 10, if not more. And one of them is being speaker-centered. And I see this consistently throughout any kind of industry or organization. People talk about what's important to them, not what's important to the listener. So what do? They get up and they talk about their product. Nobody cares. But they have a pain point or a dream or a goal that they want to accomplish. Find out what that is and then lead with that, because that's what's going to draw them in. And if you set up your structure right, then your product or service is going to solve that problem. So that's how you pack a punch. You also do it by being brief and to the point. So I just gave you that formula, which is called CAR, challenge, action, and result. And when you have those templates in your head and you can plug them in, you're going to be much more impactful, and you will pack a punch in the way that you communicate a message.
Well, I'm going to throw a curve at you because it happened over this weekend. You're at a show, and you've got a gorgeous booth. You got people in the booth, but what should be how do you create a message or a formula to engage people as they walk by your booth?
Oh, you're talking about a trade show. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that becomes the challenge. So the first thing is, how are you showing up at the booth? When I've been at trade shows, I see people sitting there, they're talking to each other, they're eating, they're chewing gum. That does not attract people. So the first thing is, are you standing there? Are you making eye contact? Are you looking at people? And rather than saying, oh, would you like a brochure, comment on something. Say good morning and comment or compliment them on something. But with trade shows, it's good to have something to bring them in, whether it's a contest or some kind of activity or paraphernalia that will attract them. So the first thing is to attract their eye by having an attractive booth, by using colors that attract, by looking good, by having people cohesive and welcoming people with a smile. It's amazing what a smile can do. So that would be the first starting point. The second thing is, once they come over, you want to engage them in conversation by asking them questions and getting them to talk. The mistake I see is right away people start selling. Not the right approach. You want to talk to them, get them engaged, because then they'll start telling you things. And then once that happens, it's much easier to sell them. So listen and question.
Many years ago, there was a salesman named Rocco Pirro, and he always used to say, you start off the conversation at a booth by asking me, why are you here? And I always thought it was a great question.
It's a great question.
I'm just curious about that. I broke up your discussion, but I'd like to go back, because you're bringing up all the points that over time I've had to learn through painful experience, and I do mean sometimes painful experience. What happens? Well, let me ask you this: what do you do when you bomb?
Oh. You cry and you get over it. Well, a couple of things. If you're bombing, there's recovery. So when I work with people, we first anticipate what's the worst thing that could happen, and we plan for it. So that gives you that grace under pressure because you can recover. So I'll address it in two ways. One is getting out of bombing totally. Something goes wrong. So here's where it's good to have a number of one-liners at your fingertips that you can say, and strategies for recovery. So when I've talked to people and they've said, oh, I'm really nervous, and I'll say, well, what are you afraid of? Well, what if I get up on that platform and I trip? And I said, okay, well, let's imagine that you did. What could you say? And, I say, what about saying, I want you to know I've been practicing that entrance for weeks, or never let it be said that I don't know how to make an entrance. So the key here is that when you know how to recover and you don't take yourself so seriously, the audience laughs with you and they have even more respect for you. So that's trying to prevent it and work it. Sometimes you finish your presentation and it was a total bomb. And what you do is you learn from that. You finish up and you leave and you get feedback. You look at the audience evaluations. You talk to people that you know who will tell you the truth. And you do your own reflection. You figure out, okay, what happened to cause this? And if it's something that you did, then you know what you can do to recover. Sometimes there are things beyond your control, and it was just the wrong situation, and you have to move on. But you don't want to beat yourself up when you bomb. You want to learn from it. That's the key thing. And you know what? It happens to all of us. Every single one will have that experience at some point.
What do you do when the equipment fails?
I've had that too. All right, so it's good to have a backup. Honestly, I think where Power pointed out, I was doing a book signing and presentation this morning in New York City. It was a small group. I just had a little hand up for them because there was no need for PowerPoint. But let's say the technology crashes. The first thing that I do when I go on site is I ask for the IT and the AV person. And I have a name for them. I call them VIPs because if they're not around, it's very hard to recover from that. So if that happens, you can call a break, make a comment, and ask them to work on that, and then continue on as they're trying to fix the technology. And I've had that happen. And someone said to me, I was really impressed that you kept going on even though they were still working on that in the background. Luckily, they got it fixed. The other thing is to have a backup. So if you were using PowerPoint or Keynote slides and it totally dies, have a handout, like a deck that you can go from so that you at least know where you are, and that can help. And the other thing is you need to be able to change gears. If the technology fails, talk from your knowledge base, tell stories, get a dialogue and a discussion going in the group. And those are some of the things to overcome that. I know somebody who had memorized 5 lines, and so what happened was the lights went out, and then the slide went black. And every time something happened, he had a one-liner, and it made people laugh. And at the end, he said, it's a good thing a 6th thing didn't happen because I did not have a 6th ad-lib. So, again, a lot of this has to do with preparation. The best thing is to prevent it from happening in the first place by getting on site early, testing the equipment. And you know something? I did that, and I still had a blowout. I was doing a live stream in a company. It was their studio. We did a dry run 10 minutes before. Everything was working. We went live, and it stopped working, and they had to find new cables. Not our fault, but that's what happened. So we just had to call a timeout until we could get back up again. Murphy's Law.
You and I have the same experiences. But let's go another direction. Let's talk about jokes. Half the jokes that I started out with years ago, you can't say anymore. Well,
that's right.
What are the 2 or 3 safe topic jokes that you can now talk about?
I would say self-deprecating humor is usually the safest kind of humor. And notice I'm saying humor, not jokes, because there are few people who can tell a joke really well. And the difference is a joke has a punchline, and there's a real timing to it. And any comedian will tell you if you're off on the timing, it doesn't work. So stay away from jokes unless you're a really good comedian. But use humor, and telling your own stories that are self-deprecating and funny work the best. It's really unfortunate that we've become so politically correct now. There's so many words that you can't say and subjects that you can't talk about. I have a friend who was a stand-up comedian and became a motivational humorist, and he said he can't tell his story anymore about his Italian father because people object to that, and yet it was his own experience. But he said, I can't do that. So I would say talk to the people who are asking you to speak and have that conversation in advance. You know, what do I need to stay away from? There might be something that just happened in an organization, and you need to know about it and to stay away from it. Sometimes they'll say, don't talk about this subject. It's a sore subject with management. Okay, then don't do that. So use humor. Self-deprecating is the safest kind.
It's ironic you say that about the Italians. A lot of times, I worked for Essence magazine, which is the Black Women's magazine, and I succeeded by calling everybody paisan, but I don't think I could do that today. But it's a sad commentary. But let's get back. You know, this we're talking with Diane DiResta. She's founder and CEO of DiResta Communications. Your website, Diane?
DiResta.com, DIRESTA.com.
And your book?
Knockout Presentations, How to Deliver Your Message with Power, Punch, and Pizzazz. Now in its third edition.
That's really great. We have just a few minutes left. Could you kind of summarize your thoughts on all these presentations and what we talked about?
Yes, I would say that gifted speakers are born, but effective speakers are made, and everybody can be effective in getting across a message and making a connection and building a relationship with an audience, whether it's 1 or 1,000. And the difference between 1 and 1,000 is that when you have a large group, you want to break them down and talk to one person at a time, and that's going to help you calm your nerves. We can all talk to one person. And keep in mind the YAM formula. Know yourself, know your audience, and know your message. Don't complicate it. It's really simple. It may not always be easy to implement, but with practice, it can be effective because it is not only a business and leadership skill, it is truly the new competitive advantage. We all need to be better and better at speaking.
Well, it's really been terrific, Diane. I could go on and on because public speaking is always something small business owners tell me is often their most difficult part of the job. But you said something earlier, how important it was for sales. Will you repeat that?
Well, it's critical for sales because people are, in a sense, buying you. And what I said earlier is that things have become so commoditized that what separates you from the pack, whether you're selling a product or service, is your presentation and how you talk about yourself. Your elevator pitch can either attract or detract people. And so the more that you know how to speak your message, deliver your message, and be in alignment so that your body language, your voice, and your words are all giving off the same message, the more effective you're going to be. And the most important thing is to care about the other person and build a relationship. Connect from the platform. Make a connection, smile, ask them questions, and learn about them, and speak to their self-interest, not to yours.
I always say start your letters off by the word you. And I know it's also the same in speaking. We're talking with Diane DiResta. Diane, your website again?
DiResta.com, DIRESTA. And the book is Knockout Presentations, How to Deliver Your Message with Power, Punch, and Pizzazz. And you can get that online. And should be in the bookstores as soon as it launches or pretty soon afterwards. The launch is on September 18th.
A link to her website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future Recalculating show. And you can also tell us if there's a guest you'd like to hear. Diane, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Marcus Lemonis, J.D. Powers, and John Scully, and 100 other presidents and experts contributed to Recalculating the book. Why did all these people agree to contribute to the book? I'm Don Mazzella, and I'm the editorial director of Small Business Digest. And for 20 years, we have been offering small business leaders information and data to increase profits. Recalculating the book was named the best small business book by the Independent Press Association. Whether you need help with marketing, staffing, finance, operations, technology, or many other subjects, they're all here in Recalculating the book. They're now available at Amazon at a reduced cost. We've also created the radio program Recalculating on recalculating.biz.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com. Welcome back to Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business, as they discuss things that are happening now that are affecting your business success.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but we're lucky enough to have Edgewater CEO Steve Kelley here to join us about email security and more. Steve, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you very much, Don. It's a pleasure to join you.
You know, we've been hitting hard about security for small business because we think it's important, and you bring another important element to it, and we're going to discuss that. But Steve, first, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Steve Kelley, and I'm president of EdgeWave. And I have been in information technology my entire career and spent the last 17 years in cybersecurity. And today at EdgeWave, our vision and mission is to deliver the world's safest email inboxes for organizations of all sizes.
Well, that's succinctly. Your website for people before we go any further?
Sure. Our website is edgewave.com, and that is edgewave.com.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead and ask a question. How did you come up with that name?
So the name is an interesting one. Have you ever been to, we were just talking about an air show here that's coming to San Diego, and if you've ever seen a jet right before it goes supersonic, a lot of times what you'll see is this cloud where the pressure of moisture is right ahead of supersonic flight. And that is actually called the EdgeWave. And so when you think about an organization that's just getting ready to go supersonic, that's us here at EdgeWave in terms of delivering the world's safest inboxes and providing advanced cybersecurity measures for email security and other solutions for organizations.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you, email. What do you mean by email security, and how does it affect first the people who send out emails, and also the people who receive it?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, probably today the most prolific communication channel for all organizations tends to be email, and it's a great channel of communication for organizations for a number of reasons. First of all, it's easy to use using a PC or a mobile phone. Number two is you can conduct business fairly easy with it. You can have agreements that are either sent via email, or you can or transact business over email. And then finally, email also offers a way of communicating out of band. It does not have to be live and connected. It can occur where I can send you an email one day, and then you can reply back at your own convenience. And so the email channel of communication is the most broadly used, and therefore it's also one of the most widely attacked vulnerabilities for an organization. Approximately 90% of all security breaches start with a phishing email, and quite simply put, a phishing email is essentially an email that's sent by a cyber criminal. Could be to anybody in your organization, and it's sent with the purpose of getting somebody to take some kind of an action that will lead to profit or gain for the cyber criminal. It could be clicking on a nefarious web link. It could be opening up an attachment that would embed malicious software on a computer, or it could be getting somebody to say, make a financial transaction and transfer money into some kind of an offshore bank account. And so when we talk about email security, it's the number one attack vector for all cyber criminals, and therefore it's the one area where most organizations should make sure that they have the best solution in place.
I couldn't agree with you more. Just this morning, I've been getting emails from this PR organization saying that I owed them money, and I've never heard the organization before. But usually, when it first appeared, I deleted it, and I get 3 or 4 a week, are very suspicious. They get through because I have to have a fairly wide open spam because of the people that come into the show. But usually if I delete it one time, I never hear from them again. But this is the 5th time I've gotten this email saying I owe them money. And I've never opened it because I'm convinced that opening that email will lead to vast damage. But I'm sure a lot of our listener employees don't have the self-control I do in this respect. Because if you see it 4 or 5 times, you figure. So that's my story. So how do you help me prevent this from happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, there are a lot of traditional email security defenses that are out there. Typically, they act as gateways to look at emails on inbound and as well as outbound from your organization. And on the inbound, they'll do some, pretty basic level of scanning for viruses and things like that. But in a lot of cases, the cyber criminals have already figured out what those filters look like, and they actually will craft very specific emails to very specific individuals in such a way that it evades those more traditional defenses. And so what we're focused on today at EdgeWave, more so than any other organization, is what we would call post-delivery detection and protection. And so that means, by post-delivery, it means what happens when an email actually makes it through the gateway, lands in your inbox, how do you actually deal with it from there? And so one of the things that we developed was a service called Threat Test. And with one click of a button, you can actually send that email up to our cloud-based service, and we actually have a combination of machines and machine learning as well as human review that will analyze that message for you and get back to you within a matter of minutes and let you know whether or not that email is a legitimate email, whether or not it's malicious, or if it's in a gray area where it looks like it's a socially engineered attack trying to engage in a conversation with you. And this solution is actually, we're a first mover in this part of the market, and we're doing something that's completely different from anybody else that's out there. Today, what a lot of organizations are doing is just asking their end users to send emails to their IT department. or even worse than that, they're asking end users to figure out on their own whether or not it's malicious in nature. And the fact is that neither the end users nor the IT departments are either fully skilled or properly tooled to do that. And that's where we take over and provide a much more comprehensive, much more sophisticated solution that works in a matter of minutes.
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit, Steve. What concerns me, and the reason we have people like you on our program, is that a vast majority of companies still do not recognize the seriousness of this the threat that's out there. Can you go into it a little bit now and kind of give us some ideas of some of the problems that we're facing, companies here and abroad?
Yeah, absolutely. So the fact is that cybersecurity is an issue for organizations of all sizes. Just because an organization might not be a Fortune 500 organization doesn't mean that they're not a target for cyber criminals. If you think about it in the most basic way, if you thought about a traditional criminal walking up and down a street, the last house that they're going to try to hit is the one with the guard gate, the dog, the security cameras. They're going to go try to hit they're going to walk a few more blocks and find the house that looks like it's a lot more easy to break in. And that holds true in the cyber security use case as well, whereas cyber criminals are going to go after the organizations that are the easiest to breach. And so, today what's happening is that the easiest place to breach is not only a smaller organization that maybe doesn't have all the resources of a larger company, but also, another angle is to also attack the end user, the unsuspecting end user that may be distracted, overworked, underpaid, and distracted by, an influx of emails as well as other distractions that come online. And so, being able to alleviate those distractions and being able to offload the analysis of whether or not an email might be suspicious or malicious is an area where we think is untapped in the market today.
I couldn't agree more. But why is it that people aren't recognizing this security threat?
Well, what's happening today is a lot of organizations are using, what I would say would be, cloud-based, free tools that come with, let's say, a Microsoft Office 365 or a Google Gmail type of an infrastructure. They think just because they're hosting their email security infrastructure in Microsoft's and Google's cloud means that they're already secure. And the fact is that that's the easiest playground for a cyber criminal to test out malicious emails, malware, to see what's getting through, and then to go ahead and exploit those vulnerabilities by attacking organizations that are up in those cloud-based tools and infrastructures. And so really, I think a lot of organizations have a false sense of security when it comes to hosting their critical infrastructure in the cloud, and they need to understand that the cloud can be a very effective and efficient way of managing IT, but it's not necessarily always the most secure way of doing it.
We're talking with Steve Kelley. He's CEO of EdgeWave. Steve, your website again for our listeners?
Yeah, it's www.edgewave.com.
Okay, well, now let's go a little further. How do you price your offering?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. We provide 100% cloud-based service that protects both Microsoft and Google infrastructure, and we charge on a monthly basis, starting at $2 per user per month for the most basic level of protection. And as organizations want to become more secure in terms of getting, a higher level of sophistication and a higher level of automation, we can actually go up from there as well.
Okay, so Steve, say somebody gets through your all of your defenses. Do you then help your clients? How should I say it? Come get clean, or is that something else someone else would do?
Yeah. So first of all, in the sense of an email getting through our defenses, the likelihood is relatively low there for a few reasons. First of all, once somebody pushes the threat test button, automatically that email is sent up into our cloud infrastructure. It's quarantined in the user's mailbox so that they can't get access to it until we've determined whether or not it's clean or not. And then ultimately, if it is a malicious email, we will automatically delete that email from their infrastructure so that nobody will access it and nobody will get infected with it. And even more than that, we can actually go out and look in other email inboxes in the organization to see if there was the same or similar attack that was also perpetrated. In a lot of cases, cyber criminals will not only test or try to attack one individual, they'll send out a small number, so a small handful of emails to a few unsuspecting users and hope that one of them clicks. And for them, it's about a numbers games. The more at-bats that they get, the more likelihood there is that somebody will actually fall susceptible to one of these attacks, and therefore create a potential breach in that environment. So what we do is through automation, machine learning, and human review, we analyze the email. We'll go ahead and remove the email. And even when we analyze the email, and if we find out that the email isn't indeed safe, we actually have other elements of review. We have an escalation process in our own analyst team to make sure that the most senior of email security analysts reviews and determines that email is clean and okay for use within the organization.
Well, can you talk about some of the latest threats to small businesses that you've seen that kind of gives a flavor of what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most basic type of a phishing attack would be trying to get an end user to click on a link or open up a file that would embed malware on their device. And those are ones that people are pretty familiar with. Today there's other types of evolving cyber threats. One good example of this would be what we would call business email compromise. And in that situation, either maybe a CEO's email account has been compromised, and a cyber criminal starts sending emails out internally to the organization, asking for people to, let's say, transfer funds or things like that. That's been an emerging area that we've identified and seen in the marketplace. There's another one as well, which is crypto mining, which is trying to get an unsuspecting user to basically download some malware that could either be used to spread in an organization or be used to actually create cryptocurrencies using the organization's infrastructure and resources. And so these are two of the more emerging attack vectors that we've seen in terms of phishing attacks, and they're ones that organizations, without having the right tools or skill set or experience, are going to be able to resolve on their own.
That was an interesting one, which I never heard of. You mean cryptocurrency? Well, they could use an organization to create a cryptocurrency? Yeah,
absolutely. So what happens, and this happens more often than one would think. Let's say bitcoins are basically created through computer algorithms. Basically, it's a really hard mathematical problem that needs to be solved, and once you've solved that problem, you actually earn a Bitcoin. And but those problems are so difficult to solve. They require massive amounts of computing power to do so. And so the idea of actually not purchasing and running your own computer systems, but embedding software on other people's systems so that they're actually solving the problem and using their own computing resources, their own power resources to create Bitcoins. That's been an emerging area for cyber criminals. And basically, if there's a way to make money on the internet, cyber criminals will go ahead and try to exploit that, and will try to exploit the most unsuspecting people and most unsuspecting companies to do so.
Wow, I'm always scared when I talk to experts like you, and it makes me afraid to turn on my computer sometime. But let me ask you this question. Sometimes somebody their mailing list will be compromised, and they'll somebody will send out something that from a friend says, check this website. You go onto it and maybe something different. That to me is the most benign that I've seen of these. But how did they get into your mail list? Again, is it through the emailing, or I'm always amazed when I'm going to leave it and ask you.
So typically the way that they get access to the mail list is that somebody's, that particular mailbox has been breached, right? And so if there's a contact list in there, or even if there's just a bunch of sent emails in the sent folder, cyber criminals have automated tools that will basically mine those contact lists and then therefore send out malicious emails to the entire contact list purporting to be their friend or colleague. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing, those, even though they seem to be benign, if you click on that link, there's a very good chance that your personal device will be infected, your account could be compromised, and then therefore your contact list could be exploited as well. So seemingly a basic phishing attack can have vast repercussions.
Yeah, I know that. But now, for instance, I have a Gmail account, but I also have an account through an ISP. Can you still work, whether it's a Gmail account or someone's ISP-based email system? Does it really matter what system in order to use your product?
Yeah, it does not matter. We can support, our email security suite can support any hosted infrastructure. In fact, we actually work with a number of managed service providers and internet service providers today to provide email protection. And, in terms of how the post-delivery protection and incident response solutions work, they tend to work best with a Microsoft backend. But most organizations and service providers are using Microsoft to manage their email accounts, and so that's usually not an issue.
Okay, well, I use Smarter Mail Enterprise 15.7. Can you get into my system, for instance, and offer me the protection, or does it have to be like a major one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We can provide protection to any back-end email infrastructure.
Well, no, I'm going to talk to you after the show. Again, it's not so much scaring me, but galvanizing me and my organization to do this protection, because we are really worried. If anything ever happened to our system, everything is on our computer. We do everything, including the show, on our computer.
Yeah.
And we'd be in a
the problem with cybersecurity breaches today is it's usually not just financial. It can also be damage to the brand reputation, and in a lot of cases can cause irreparable harm to your customer base. So happy to talk to you about that after the interview.
Really, we're talking with Steve Kelley. He's the CEO of EdgeWave. We're getting close to the end, Steve. What are the 2 or 3 things you tell, or rather you ask new clients when they come to you and say, we're thinking of the security we need? What do you ask them?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the interesting conversations that we have with organizations today is I think, again, we talked about this before, is many have a false sense of security that they will not be breached. I'm not a Fortune 500 organization. I don't need to worry about somebody targeting me, and the fact is that all organizations are going to be targeted, and everybody should actually accept that there's a very high likelihood of actually being breached, right? And so for today, just about every business is connected to the internet, and so the likelihood of being breached is very, very high. So the first thing I would do is make sure that there's an acceptance that they could or will be breached in the future. Number two is to make sure that when they're thinking about a cybersecurity attack, really understanding which assets are the most valuable and perhaps which ones are the most vulnerable, right? So almost every organization has customer data. How comfortable are you that is properly protected? Almost every organization is processing financial payments. How confident are you that that's protected? And then also, if you have any specific personal or other information, like if you're in a healthcare organization or a financial institution, the risk goes up dramatically when you're dealing with people's personal information. So making sure that you identify the valuable assets that may become targets. And then finally, with phishing being the number one attack vector for cyber criminals and data breaches, making sure that you've got a solution in place that's protecting that most often used channel of communication, which is email, and making sure that it not only provides a protective gateway from inbound emails, but also a method for post-delivery detection and incident response.
I just got another one across my computer. Do you also protect if someone has a service which sends in fax to the computer? Where you fax to your computer rather than to a fax machine.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Yeah, absolutely. So any of those fax services typically will convert the fax to a PDF or a file attachment, and then send it to you over email, right? So anything that's coming in over the email channel and converted fax files and things like that, those are things that can be protected with our solution, both on the inbound as well as on the post-delivery protection.
Wow. We've been talking with EdgeWave CEO Steve Kelley. A link to his website will be on recalculating.biz tonight. Steve, once again, your website?
Website is www.edgewave.com, and EdgeWave is spelled EDGEWAVE.
You might wonder why I asked it so much, but we got feedback from our audience that they want to know the website when we're interviewing people like yourself. And we will link recalculating.biz to your website tonight when we put this interview up. Steve, thank you so much for being with us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Don. I appreciate it.
Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.
Dan Perkins here from recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, "If you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there," is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.